Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to share with you this little experiment that has kept me busy in the past weeks. That is trying to get FreeBSD up and running, at least the bare minimum. Now, as many of you may know, the change in the code of conduct in the Linux programming world, or at least the reasons behind this change, have made a lot of people unhappy. And, BSD has got a lot more visibility and maybe has gained a lot of appeal in the past couple of months. But yeah, I've never tried it before, and I guess it was time to take a look at it. And I chose FreeBSD because it seems to be the most popular distribution of BSD. I guess you can still call them distributions. But anyway, as you can see, this is running, of course, inside of a virtual machine. For the moment, I didn't want to try it on real hardware, because, time consuming. Now, this is, of course, completely different from GNU Linux, starting from the installation. And the first problem I had was getting it online. No, actually, the very first problem I had was downloading it, because the servers are very slow. In fact, I was completely unable to download it from the website, and I had to opt for a torrent option. Still an official torrent, but not from the HTTP mirror. Then, when I set the virtual machine up, I wasn't able to get the installer online. No matter what settings I used for the networking, I looked up online, found as expected nothing useful, and then I realized I set the virtual machine on EFI, and I actually read somewhere that FreeBSD is not that great at handling EFI systems, at least not all of them. So I thought maybe I need to set it on BIOS mode, and in fact it worked. So after that I was able to install the system smoothly. Now, after the installation, being this of course a very minimalistic system, you're greeted with the usual console. So following the manual, you will need to set up the Xorg environment and stuff, and install some window manager or something to get actual stuff done. So I opted for DWM, which I really wanted to try, and here I really set it up to the bare minimum because this is not what I want to talk about today. But yeah, so we have the system in a somewhat serviceable state, so we can talk a little bit about the main differences I've noticed with Linux. So the first thing that comes to my mind is, of course, that you don't have systemd. Now, there are a few Linux distros that come without systemd, namely Void. You can have Gentoo without systemd, Dev1. Here, though, you don't even have any other usual init system, like sysv, so you don't even have run levels. Instead, what you got is RC. So RC is, as far as I was able to understand, not that the BSD documentation is so clear and easy to read, more of that later, but basically RC is FreeBSD's own init system. It reads the /etc/rc.conf file, where you can configure what services you want to enable at boot time, and then all of these services are kinda located in /etc/rc.d or /usr/local/etc/rc.d. So, first difference, no systemd. Now, I don't want to start a flame now, but I actually bless systemd. Guys, I surely know that it created a lot of problems, especially for sysadmins, for servers and stuff, but I think it really simplifies a lot of things on the desktop side. Again, that's why many Linux distros without systemd are born, to satisfy the various needs. But as much as I appreciate how clean and minimalist this OS is, I have to admit it's hard to learn and configure the right way, and the lack of systemd might surely be a reason for that. Not the only reason, but at least one of them. Anyway, speaking of /usr/local, here's another big difference with Linux. The file system is much more organized. In /etc and /bin, for example, you only have the configuration files and the binaries that are strictly needed to run the base system. Anything you install and configure ends up in /usr/local and then /etc or /bin. Now, does this affect daily usability? Yes, because every time you need to edit a file, you have to type a path that's twice as long or more than the one you will type on Linux. Now, this is just fun. You can set an alias, you can set up an alias if you want. But yeah, I honestly don't see a huge advantage to this. It's certainly nice because the file system is much more organized and clean. But yeah, it's just the way it is. But I've mentioned aliases. And yeah, you don't have bash when you install the OS. Instead, the default shell is called CSH. Needless to say, I immediately installed and set bash. You don't even have Vim or Nano, but you know, Nano is from GNU, so obviously you don't have it by default here. Instead, the default editor is called EE. That stands for Easy Editor. And it's nice, but I really don't understand the idea behind it. You know, this should be a powerful, minimalist OS, and then the editor of choice is a mess. It works with menus and stuff. I really don't understand this choice. In my opinion, it conflicts a bit with the idea behind the whole OS. But this brings us to package and software management. And to get new software on BSD, there are mainly two ways. But first I should mention, the choice of software is not that bad, but a bit limited. You basically have access to most of the open source programs, so pretty much everything that runs on Linux should run here, as long as it is a good written program, you know, fully POSIX compliant and stuff like that. So the first and easiest way to get new software is using PKG, which is FreeBSD's own binary package manager. So a little bit like Pacman or APT, you know. It works fine, it's got all the needed functions, install, remove, upgrade, etc. But the problem is that the servers are so freaking slow. Of course, I tried different mirrors, but every one of them is so slow. I even had to increase the timeout time in the PKG settings, otherwise I will always get an operation timed out error. It's so annoying, and the repositories aren't even that great. Sometimes some useful software is lacking. I guess the project is small, so maybe people struggle to maintain powerful servers. I really don't know. So the alternative is ports. Ports is basically a collection of, I guess, application repositories. You basically move to /usr/ports, and here you have various categories of applications. You cd until you find the application that you want, and basically you will find a make file and some other definitions, I guess, that when you start to actually compile the program, it will automatically download the needed sources, dependencies, and all that you need. So you basically compile all of the software, a bit like Gen 2, but the problem is that pretty much every time you install a serious program, like I tried LibreOffice and GIMP, which I eventually downloaded in like an hour or so via the PKG system, you get errors that kill the compiling process, and you know, if you search online for solutions, you find very poor results and nothing useful. Alright, you might argue that I'm not good enough to solve them by myself, and that might be true, but if I had the time to figure out how every single piece of software works, I will now be a software or OS creator instead of a simple user. And another thing, you might have noticed that when I run commands with admin privileges, I use doas instead of sudo. Now, there's no sudo here. I mean, you can get it if you want, and you can even add doas on Linux. But yeah, I wanted to try this alternative, which is specifically designed for BSD. But then I discovered that it works better on OpenBSD, because here on FreeBSD and on Linux too, it doesn't support the persistence option. You know, that one to be able to type your password once and then it doesn't ask you for the password for a while. But I tried it anyway. I use it with the no pass option, which is less secure, but we are in a VM at the end of the day. And I really liked it because, as you can see, its configuration file is just one line. Isn't this beautiful? The sudoers file is huge compared to this. Another difference that I immediately noticed is that you don't have ALSA for audio, of course. ALSA stands in fact for Advanced Linux Sound Architecture. Instead, FreeBSD has got its own sound architecture, and you have this mixer command to control the audio levels, and of course a nice thing might be that Firefox doesn't depend on Pulse Audio here. But yeah, after all of this, how does it run? Well, pretty good, I have to say. I tried Chromium, GIMP and LibreOffice on this thing, and they work without any problem, granted that you managed to install them. I think that you can do pretty much everything you do on Linux with this OS, with a lot more of tinkering, of course, and much more than you can even imagine with Linux. Maybe some software doesn't exist. I read that the BSD license is much more rigid than the new GPL license. Specifically, you can't have any proprietary software running here, so everything must not only be free, but also open source. So forget the /opt directory. But the main problem, in my opinion, is the lack of documentation and support. I mean, we have some documentation, but it is by no means comparable to the one available for pretty much any Linux distro. Don't even think to the Arch or Gentoo wiki, they're just a dream here. And also, every time I searched for something that went wrong, I always found very old forum topics, with very rarely a concrete solution to the problem that often doesn't apply to the latest versions of the OS. You know, at least people seemed a little bit more kind than the average Linux forums user, but this is just my opinion, my impression, this was just my impression. And even if the documentation gets better with time, I think that the system is not only too different from what I'm used to, but even very, very difficult. So it will probably take too much time to get used to it. And at the moment, I don't think it's worth it. I guess you can get away by installing a more complete desktop environment like GNOME or KDE. Maybe they handle more stuff automatically. But yeah, I might be a bit of a difficult user to satisfy because I want a pretty large margin of customization and get stuff done the way I want, otherwise I will just revert to using only Windows or macOS. But I'm also a bit lazy and I don't want to read too many pages of boring stuff. And I also don't want to have so much time to waste on an OS that's basically fighting me. So, this was my idea of FreeBSD. It's lightweight, it performs good, very good, even on a virtual machine. It's minimal, organized, but for everyday desktop usage, I don't think it's just ready. Maybe it will be in the future, it will get better, we'll see. But what do you think? Did I choose the wrong distribution? Should I have tried OpenBSD or something else? At least I hope this video was useful to someone who might want to try BSD and maybe improve what I did or even completely stay away from it. For the moment, I think I'm gonna stick to my personal Arch setup, maybe tinker a little bit more with DWM, which was instead a very interesting window manager. So guys, if you liked this video, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to my channel, that really helps me, and I will see you very soon. Ciao!